Hey YouTube, Rambling Nerd here. Today we're going to talk about Teenage Engineering's Pocket Operator Knockout and how to restore the data in it. The problem we see with most other videos is that they have an expensive field recorder that has a stereo input, and they just kind of gloss over it. And your computer's line in isn't really suitable for this either. It takes a mono signal, which is going to jumble the backup. So today we're going to take a look at how we can send data into your computer in stereo for less than $20. So first, let's take a look at the way the Pocket Operator actually backs up its data. The Pocket Operator sends its backup data through two channels. Even as a burst of static, there's a unique stream of data for each, with the right channel and the left channel both being binary bursts of basically white noise. The problem with this enters in the computer's line input. Most of them, if not all, are only going to have a single point to actually contact the plug that goes through them. So you're going to only capture the left or the right inputs, or even a more interesting, completely useless jumble of the two together. And that's what your computer is going to record, though it'll probably sound the same to you. The problem will only come in after you've attempted to back up your Pocket Operator and lost all of it that you're trying to actually restore. So what can we do about this? Well, most videos are going to use a very expensive field recorder that has a stereo input, because most people that are using these have some amount of audio equipment already on hand. But let's assume you don't. Enter the $20 USB audio capture card. USB on one side, stereo input on the other. It also offers dual RCA, which is a very popular split cable, but today we're just going to be using the direct in. Now at this point you might be wondering, why not use a stereo to mono split cable, just like you might plug into this, and capture one, then capture the other channel, and sync them on top of each other. You can definitely do this, but given how fine the steps of data are, most of the time they're nanoseconds, which Audacity can't quite zoom into, and it's quite a bit to do. And if you don't get it right the very first time, your data's gone forever, and there's no way to restore them unless you happen to get really lucky with the way you slide them together. But with this, it's as easy as plugging in a patch cable. Let's take a look at how. First, you just take your USB, and then the stereo goes right in the headphone jack like any other patch cable. Ta-da! Now that we've got it set up so that it can feed into our computer, let's take a look at some of the steps we're going to have to do to actually capture this input in Audacity. Before we step into Audacity, I just want to take a minute to look at our recording devices. We can see here we have the microphone USB plug-and-play audio device. This is what we've actually plugged in. We're going to want to set this to a default device so Audacity can more easily pick it up. I wasn't really easily able to get it to see it as an input, and there's probably a pretty easy way to fix that, but setting it as default is also pretty easy for me. Here we are inside Audacity. If you're not familiar, it's just a free audio editing program, but we're going to have to configure a few things before we can correctly capture our data dump. The first thing is we want to make sure that our input is set to the Microsoft Sound Mapper's default input. This is going to be what we set our default input to earlier, which will make our life a little easier. We also want to make sure that the project sample rate is at 44 kilohertz, and we also want to change the recording quality. By default, it's at 32-bit and 32 kilohertz, but what we need is 16-bit and not 32. So I'm going to set both of these here, but keep in mind, these are default settings, so if we change these, we're going to want to change them back. And with that, we should be all set. So I'm going to hit record, and I first want to make sure that we're actually getting the sound through like we want. I'm playing a couple sounds here, but those peaks are pretty low. So what we're going to do is hold BPM and set our volume to 14 or 15, and there we can see the peaks are much better captured. So that's good. We're going to stop. We can use this little X to get rid of a bad attempt, and we're going to hit record again and press right sound play, and there we can see our static data dump is being recorded in 44 kilohertz at 16 bits in stereo. And once it completes this capture, we'll actually have all the data from our Pocket Operator digitally so that we can restore it. There it is. So we'll stop this recording, and you can just play it back right out of here. But if you're going to save it as a file, one thing that you need to keep in mind is when you go to export it,
If you export it as an MP3, it's going to put it through some compression, and that's liable to corrupt the data. So what we need to do is export it as a wave. I'll save this as Untitled 2 to make sure that we're being very clear. The metadata you can edit for your own convenience, but shouldn't affect the file at all. And there we have it. We have a saved Pocket Operator dump file. So let's go back to the Pocket Operator and restore it.
Now that we've captured our backup data, let's restore it into the Pocket Operator. I just have a typical patch cable here. This one's actually from an old set of headphones I don't use anymore, but that comes with a small caveat. There are TRS connections, tip ring sleeve, which carry stereo headphone signals like we're used to, and there are TRRS connections, which carry that in addition to a mic channel like we have in this wire. This can cause issues where the contact areas don't always perfectly line up inside the jacks. However, in my case, it didn't cause a problem. Now before we restore the Pocket Operator, I just want to show you that I've cleared all the sounds out and all the patterns. They're all very empty, and even the selected sounds are definitely empty themselves. So what we're going to do is then take our headphone cable, which is plugged into the headphone jack of my computer speakers, and plug it right in, and we're going to hold Write Sound Record. That RCU indicates it's listening. So we're going to go ahead and play our backup file, which we can hear now. And mine's not going to be very long. I only backed up a couple of sounds and patterns, but again, it can be as long as 2 minutes. But after it's done, we should have our sounds and our patterns backed up into the Pocket Operator. And there it is. So let's go ahead and unplug this. And now if we hold sound, we can see that we have 8 different sounds. And if we hold pattern, we can see that it also backed up the patterns. So with that, you've backed up your Pocket Operator.